Hello and welcome. You're watching the news tonight, your daily roundup of all the big stories from India and around the world. I'm Ishan Russell. And of course, the big story today is the 18th SAARC summit that closed in Kathmandu. We'll be getting you live updates and reports from Kathmandu. But first, let's have a look at the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Pakistan Premier Nawaz Sharif closed the SAARC summit with a handshake. Member nations signed agreement on energy sharing. In Jammu and Kashmir, the army calls in tanks to flush out terrorists in the Kathar village of Arnia sector. 4 terrorists among 11 people killed in the encounter. In the Rajya Sabha, opposition levels charges of crony capitalism. TMC's Derek O'Brien raises the issue of SBI's $1 billion loan to Adani Group's Australia project. Government denies any face-off over the line of actual control between India and China, says it's a problem of perception. And a sad day in sports. World cricket mourns the passing away of Australia's Phillip Hughes. India's second tour match in Adelaide cancelled. And the big story today is, of course, the close of the 18th SAARC summit. Member countries signed an energy cooperation pact even as Nepalese Prime Minister Sushil Koirala announced that the next SAARC summit would be held in Islamabad in Pakistan. Koirala also announced that SAARC countries will give 3 months to approve the regional motor vehicle and railway agreements.
A brief handshake and some pleasantries. It was an exclusive India-Pakistan moment during the SAARC summit.
We go back very satisfied with the outcome of the summit. India is for peaceful and cooperative relations with Pakistan. We are interested in meaningful dialogue. If this interaction today or this shake hand leads to that, we would welcome that.
Both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Pakistan Premier Nawaz Sharif reportedly also held private, unofficial talks in a more informal atmosphere.
The retreat have generated a momentum in enhancing mutual trust and confidence, goodwill and understanding, as well as the spirit of togetherness towards realizing common objectives.
Member countries signed a deal to create a seamless electricity grid, seen as the only silver lining in the summit, after Pakistan declined to sign 3 multilateral pacts.
There were 3 agreements that were under discussion. 2 of them, they have not been finalized, and Pakistan is not the only country that has not completed its internal procedures. The reason was that there was an expert group meeting. The agreements after that meeting had not been put up to the ministers.
SAARC foreign ministers including Sushma Swaraj, India's External Affairs Minister, and Sartaj Aziz, Pakistan PM's advisor on foreign affairs, were also present at the retreat. A lack of warmth between the prime ministers at the SAARC was held responsible for the lackluster summit, although Modi did applaud before and after Sharif's vote of thanks as the host for the next SAARC summit in Islamabad next year.
Even after 3 decades of its formation, SAARC has not been able to take off fully. Once again, SAARC was overshadowed by the hostilities between India and Pakistan. The only face saver was the Energy Pact. In Kathmandu, with camera person Manoj Kumar, Arfa Khanam Sherwani for Rajya Sabha Television.
And our correspondent Arfa Khanam Sherwani has been covering all the goings-on at the SAARC summit, and she joins us live from Kathmandu. Arfa, good evening. How does the Indian side see the Modi-Sharif handshake moment? As mere atmospherics, or is it hope to signal a more durable thaw in the Indo-Pak relationship?
Yes, actually, Prime Minister Modi and Nawaz Sharif ignored each other for at least 2 days, and only when they met in the retreat session, they shook hands with each other and also smiled at each other. We are told that much of the persuasion was done by the Nepalese leaders here. So, in fact, not just the Indian or Pakistani media, even the global media was seen quite focusing on India and Pakistan. So, in fact, it is better, certainly better better than what we saw earlier, that they both even did not face each other. But we can't really say that this indicates towards any kind of a thaw or something between the two countries. But yes, something is better than nothing. And if you see how the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson reacted, he said if handshakes leads to meaningful dialogue, then we welcome it. Earlier in the day, we saw him saying that the Indian side was deeply disappointed by the way Pakistan had blocked the way for 3 key agreements. Thankfully, towards the end of the summit, 2 of them still could not see light of the day, but at least one agreement, one energy pact sort of worked as the face saver and saved the show for the 8 countries. So in fact, once again it was proved that how the hostilities between the 2 countries can actually overshadow the entire SAARC summit, because as you would know that almost 90% of the SAARC consists India and Pakistan. Even the other countries have to bear the brunt of the bad relations, or I would say not so good relations between India and Pakistan.
All right, now, as you just said, the energy agreement is really the only face saver from the SAARC summit. So how significant is it for India and member countries?
Actually, the focus of the entire summit was on connectivity, that how actually through connectivity we can actually integrate the entire region, the 8 nations of this region. But out of these 3 agreements, only one could be signed. Agreement on railways and road connectivity could not be signed because Pakistan did not agree. Pakistan said that they're yet to talk to the people there in their country. They were talking about the people in transports, unions and departments. They were talking about they've not been able to build a consensus back home, and that is why they need more time about it. So now 3 months' time has been given to SAARC to work again on these 2 pacts. Though a similar pact has already been signed by Nepal and India. So I think the way forward is going to be really to, if Pakistan does not agree to come along, then there are going to be some bilateral agreements between, say, India and Bangladesh, say India and Maldives, India and Sri Lanka. Some of the people here in the Pakistani side were seen saying that is it an attempt to actually isolate Pakistan and leaving Pakistan alone and rest of the 7 nations will go ahead. But then again, the blame has to be shared by Pakistan also for blocking the way. But one thing very important I would like to say here is that besides these 8 countries, I think the dark horse will be called, China can be called a dark horse, which sort of worsened the relationship between India and Pakistan. Pakistan blamed that India was coming in the way of China becoming the member of SAARC group. In fact, Pakistan was actually accusing India of doing so. You may be knowing that China is actually very keen to take the membership of SAARC. Even some of the Nepalese leaders and ministers were also lobbying for China here. So I think it's very important to understand that, despite the fact that most of these agreements were not signed, but still there were some consensus on how poverty should be removed from South Asian nations, and how terrorism, extremism should also be, confronted together. So despite the fact that Indo-Pak relations still overshadowed the summit, we wouldn't really call it a great success. A better summit was actually seen in Maldives 3 years ago than this time around, though there was new regional imagination which was taking place, but still the result was not very fruitful.
All right, so the bilateral ties are once again overshadowing the regional aspirations of all these individual countries. Let's see whether it can be a different story in Islamabad. Thanks very much, Arfa, for joining us with that update. All right, moving to news back home. A day before Prime Minister Narendra Modi's rally in Udhampur, terrorists struck in Jammu's Arnia today. 11 people, including 3 civilians and 3 army soldiers, were killed in a fierce gun battle. The attack comes only days after the army issued a warning saying terrorists plan to disrupt the poll process.
हमारे पास जो है आने वाले दिन में जो है कुछ मिलिटेंट ग्रुप और कुछ ऐसे दस्ते जो भारत के खिलाफ है, वो लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल में और भी लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल के अलावा और बाकी हिंटरलैंड में, मतलब अंदर के इलाके में भी कुछ ऐसे इनपुट है कि ये लोग जो है इलेक्शन प्रोसेस को वो डिस्टर्ब करना चाहते हैं।
Less than 24 hours after the army issued the warning of a possible militant strike ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Jammu, militants struck again. Suspicious movement was noted near the line of control in Rajouri district in the early hours of Thursday. But the forces were on alert, ready to foil any militant design. The fierce gun battle between the militants and the security forces in the Arnia sector resulted in at least 10 casualties, including 3 civilians and 3 army men. The police, army and BSF carried out a search operation and apprehended a militant identified as Adul Qayomi.
पाकिस्तान की तरफ से टेररिस्ट्स की इन्फिल्ट्रेशन की सूचना मिली है। उन्होंने एक हिंदुस्तानी व्हीकल को जब्त कर लिया और उसके माध्यम से जब जा रहे थे तो किसी ने देख लिया उनको, और जो देखने वाले ने उनको सूचना दे दी आर्मी को। आर्मी ने एक्शन लिया।
पूरा एरिया जो है अब उसको हम लोग सर्च कर रहे हैं, अपने लोगों को वहां पे भेजा है इसके बारे में जानकारी इकट्ठी करने के लिए कि कोई यहाँ से जो लोग आए हैं उनमें से स्प्लिंटर ग्रुप निकल के और यहाँ से कहीं निकला तो नहीं है।
Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah deplored the timing of the attack, saying some things would never change. He said the attack coming in the backdrop of the SAARC summit, being attended by heads of both India and Pakistan, could not be seen as a mere coincidence. But Home Minister Rajnath Singh assured that the forces are keeping a close watch on the situation.
हमारी फोर्स और वहाँ के लोग जो है पूरे मामले पर अपनी नजर बनाए हुए हैं।
Sensitive areas in the state have been put on high alert. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is due to hold election rallies in Udhampur and Poonch districts of Jammu and Kashmir on 28 November. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now some news from Parliament. The decision of the State Bank of India to give a $1 billion loan to the Adani Group's coal project in Australia echoed in the Rajya Sabha today. The Trinamool Congress's MP Derek O'Brien said the move smacked of blatant crony capitalism.
Derek O'Brien raised the issue in Zero Hour. He said the SBI signed an MOU pledging one of the single largest loans to a corporate house, despite 5 international banks refusing to lend to the Adani project.
5 leading banks of the world, Citibank, Deutsche Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, HSBC and Barclays, denied giving funds for this project in Australia. They denied giving funds. Why? Because they said coal mining in Australia is in structural decline. 2, they said coal prices have fallen by 50% in the last 3 years and will continue to fall. They also gave some environmental reasons. I don't want to get into that.
O'Brien also saw contradictions in the Prime Minister's thrust on the coal mining in Australia and Coal Minister Piyush Goyal's statement that India will be able to stop coal imports in the next 2 years. Without naming Adani Group Chairman Gautam Adani, O'Brien said he was with the Prime Minister every day during his visit to Australia.
And I'm not surprised that the Minister has got up to defend because of this perception, the Adani share has gone up by 85%.
Parliamentary Affairs Minister M. Venkaiah Naidu retorted, saying 20 people were in the business delegation that went to Australia.
The Honourable Member has got every right to raise the issue and question the decision of the bank also. That is for the concerned authorities, they will respond. But the Honourable Member has taken the name of the Honourable Prime Minister, which is highly objectionable.
Members from the left, Congress and SP also associated themselves with the issue raised by the TMC member. Priti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
And the government today allayed fears of any Chinese intrusions into Indian territory. The government maintained that troops from both sides often trespass into each other's territory accidentally as the border is not demarcated. Such situations could have been avoided if the two nations shared a common perception of the line of actual control.
India has denied any face-off with China and refuted claims of Chinese encroachment into the Indian side. In response to a query by SPMP Alok Tiwari in the Rajya Sabha, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj said such contentions arise because of the varying perception of line of actual control. The minister's reply reads, and I quote, "There is no commonly delineated line of actual control in the border areas between India and China.
From time to time, on account of differences in the perception of the LAC, situations have arisen on the ground that could have been avoided if we had a common perception of the LAC. Government regularly takes up transgression along the LAC with the Chinese side through established mechanisms including border personnel meeting, flag meetings, meetings of working mechanism for consultation and coordination on India-China border affairs and diplomatic channels, unquote. In a reply to another question, the government clarified that till date, the special representatives of both nations have met 17 times to resolve border issues. The last meeting was held in Delhi on 10th and 11th February 2014. In addition, regular meetings of Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination on India-China Border Affairs Committee are held, with the last one on October 16-17, 2014 in New Delhi. Recently, sections of Indian media and a few political parties went ballistic against the government over its handling of alleged Chinese intrusion. But the government asserted that both countries agreed that peace and tranquility on the border was the basis of expansion of relations. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
And the government has said that there will be no shortage in the production of coal despite the cancellation of coal blocks. Now, the government is in fact ready with a detailed plan to increase coal production. In a reply to the Lok Sabha, Coal Minister Piyush Goyal said the process of e-auctions of coal blocks will be completed by the 31st of March 2015.
The government claimed in Lok Sabha today that despite the cancellation in coal blocks, there will be no shortage of coal in the country. Coal Minister Piyush Goyal assured the House that generating cheap electricity and providing enough coal for electricity production was the government's top priority.
31 मार्च के पहले सरकार की पूरी कोशिश है कि इसका पूरी प्रक्रिया एक ट्रांसपेरेंट तरीके से होके इनका आवंटन या ई ऑक्शन होके ये काम में ही चालू रहे। नहीं हो पाएंगी तो उसके लिए प्रावधान किए गए हैं ऑर्डिनेंस में कि जो मायने ऑक्शन नहीं हो पाए उनको डेजिग्नेटेड अथॉरिटी बनाई गई है जो डेजिग्नेटेड अथॉरिटी इनको 1 अप्रैल के बाद ले सकती है।
The government is making efforts to use new technology to enhance coal production by Coal India. Currently, Coal India is responsible for 80% of the country's coal production.
दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण स्थिति यह है कि आज कोयले की जो रिक्वायरमेंट है उसको कोल इंडिया मीट नहीं कर पाती है। उसको मद्देनजर रखते हुए सरकार ने ठोस कदम लिए हैं, चाहे वो टेक्नोलॉजी इंट्रोड्यूस करने का हो, चाहे जो 200 से भी अधिक खाने कोल इंडिया के पास कई वर्षों से है उन खानों के ऊपर काम करना, उनका एक्सप्लोरेशन, उनमें माइनिंग प्लान्स बना के उनको काम शुरू करना, जिससे अनुमानित अगले 5 वर्षों में बढ़ाते हुए लगभग 150 से 200 मिलियन टन तक कोल इंडिया के प्रोडक्शन को सिर्फ नई खाने जिस पे काम नहीं हुआ है उससे बढ़ाया जा सकता है।
Besides increasing coal production, the government is also looking at improving the transportation facilities of the resource. For this, rail links in Odisha, Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand are being improved. Shyam Sundar, Rajya Sabha TV.
And staying with the news from the Lok Sabha, well, black money issue dominated proceedings there. The ruling party, the BJP, today insisted in the Lok Sabha that it never claimed that all the black money stashed abroad would be brought back within 100 days. Parliamentary Affairs Minister M. Venkaiah Naidu said the party was not so immature to say that it will bring back the entire black money in 100 days. Naidu said this while intervening in a debate on black money. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley said the government has identified 427 of the 627 foreign account holders.
ये सरकार पूरा प्रयास करेगी 100 दिन, 500 दिन, 1000 दिन, जितना भी समय लगे, जितने भी महीने और वर्ष लगे, जब तक इनमें से आखिरी खाते वाले को पकड़कर नहीं लाया जाएगा, हम इस प्रयास को नहीं छोड़ने वाले।
सरकार सदन को समय सीमा, मैं चाहता हूं कि समय सीमा बताइए कि विदेशों में जमा धन है जो हिंदुस्तान का, वो आप राशि कितनी है बताएंगे?
100 दिन में आप जो 15 लाख हर एक आदमी के जेब में डालने का था वो कहाँ गया, वो पूछ रहे। कॉन्फिडेंशियलिटी क्लॉज रहने के बाद ये नहीं बता सकते। ये सब मालूम रहते हुए भी आपने बाहर जनता को गुमराह किया।
All right, we'll be taking a quick break right now, but coming up on the other side, the government launches e-visa facility for tourists from 43 countries. All that and more on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching News Tonight on Rajya Sabha TV. And now let's talk about the e-visa facility that has been extended for 43 countries that has now been operationalized at 9 Indian airports starting from Thursday. Union Home Minister Rajnath Singh launched the tourist visa on arrival service enabled with electronic travel authorization scheme in New Delhi. Now, tourists from 43 countries can apply for the Indian visa in simple steps. The visa will allow entry of tourists into India within 30 days from the date of approval of ETA and will be valid for 30 days stay in the country from the date of arrival. The facility will be extended to other nations in a phased manner.
जो भी टूरिस्ट आएंगे, जो भी फ्रेमवर्क हमें तैयार करना हो, हम फ्रेमवर्क तैयार करेंगे, लेकिन सेफ एंड सिक्योर्ड कैसे उन्हें उनकी टूर को बनाया जा सकता है, यह बनाने की हम अपनी तरफ से भरपूर कोशिश करेंगे.
And now coming to news from the states, in Maharashtra it could be seen as a turning point. The BJP has initiated talks with its former ally, the Shiv Sena, over joining the government. Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis said a fresh round of dialogue will start tomorrow. The BJP is leading a minority government in the state. It won a controversial trust vote, which the opposition had ruled out as a sham. After days of lull, there's sudden activity in Maharashtra politics. Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis announced BJP's fresh initiative to end the deadlock between his party and its former ally, the Shiv Sena. Talks between the parties will resume on Friday after the first round ended inconclusively over differences in cabinet portfolios.
केंद्र में अभी भी शिवसेना एनडीए में है, केंद्र की सरकार में है, इसलिए हमने ये निर्णय किया है कि महाराष्ट्र की सरकार में भी उनकी सहभागिता होनी चाहिए. उस दृष्टि से कल हम लोग चर्चा की शुरुआत करेंगे.
Shiv Sena has welcomed the move. Its party chief Uddhav Thackeray said the Sena is ready to be back on the talking table.
शिवसेना चर्चा के लिए तैयार है क्या? फडणवीस ने कहा था जिस प्रकार से
दुष्काळावरती आम्ही कोणाशी चर्चा करायला तयार आहोत. मला वाटतं तो विषय आता आवश्यक नाही आता.
The relation between the two parties faced rough weather for the last 2 months. They decided to call off their 25-year-old alliance after talks failed over seat sharing in the assembly polls. After the BJP fell short of majority, a fresh round of talks on cabinet allocations failed to break the deadlock. If the BJP and Shiv Sena reunite, the Fadnavis government will breathe easy with a clear majority in the assembly. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. All right, now the hopes are high as the first human trial of an experimental vaccine against Ebola has produced promising results. Scientists suggest that it is safe and might help the immune system to combat the virus. Scientists at the US National Institute of Health said that 20 volunteers were immunized in a trial run and they showed immune response and developed anti-Ebola antibodies. The best thing is that none of them have suffered any serious side effects so far. There are 4 trials underway of this experimental vaccine. The vaccine has been developed by the NIH's National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and British pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline. Shifting focus to sports, and it's a sad day for cricket indeed today. Young Australian cricketer Phil Hughes passed away after battling for his life for 2 days. The cricketing world remained in shock and many teams cancelled their engagements as a mark of respect.
This statement is on behalf of Greg, Virginia, Jason and Megan Hughes. We're devastated by the loss of our much-loved son and brother Philip. It's been a very difficult few days. We appreciate all the support we have received from family, friends, players, Cricket Australia and the general public. Cricket was Philip's life and we as a family shared that love of the game with him.
The entire cricketing fraternity stood united in grief at the death of Australian cricketer Phil Hughes. 25-year-old Hughes died in hospital on Thursday, 2 days after he was struck on the head by a ball during a domestic match.
We are all very shocked and saddened by the tragic news of Philip Hughes' passing. I think all those who've played cricket, who play cricket, who have children playing cricket, are devastated by this news across the world. And our thoughts and prayers are with Philip Hughes' family and his friends.
Hughes was struck on the head by a short-pitched delivery from pacer Sean Abbott, a devastating blow that experts compared to the trauma suffered by car crash victims. Hughes had taken the cricketing world by storm when he made his Test debut in 2009, scoring a mountain of runs despite his unconventional technique.
This time he didn't hold the position, he started.
He had scored 63 runs before being struck on Tuesday, his last innings set to be an audition to replace injured captain Michael Clarke for the first Test.
The one that was caught Guptill by Martin.
Many cricketing nations cancelled their scheduled matches and appointments as a mark of respect for Hughes. A two-day tour match between India and a Cricket Australia 11 has also been cancelled.
When you start enjoying it, you don't want to give it up. So
the second day's play in the third Test between Pakistan and New Zealand in Sharjah was also abandoned as a mark of respect. In Australia, all Sheffield Shield matches were cancelled after Hughes suffered the injury, and now Cricket Australia faces a big decision on whether to go ahead with the opening Test of the summer against India next week.
Well, indeed, sad news over there. And now we'll still talk about sports and still not talk about the playing of sports, but the controversies that surround it. The Supreme Court on Thursday observed that action should be taken on the Mudgal Committee's probe report on the IPL sports fixing scam, and the team Chennai Super Kings should be terminated without further inquiry from the IPL tournament. The observation have put a big question mark over not only the future of the team, but also of the IPL tournament in general.
Disqualify Chennai Super Kings from IPL. Who is controlling Chennai Super Kings? Why did not BCCI disqualify Chennai Super Kings? How can you say there is no conflict of interest? Act on the Mudgal report. Observations made by the Supreme Court on Thursday that will further unnerve suspended BCCI President N. Srinivasan. The top court said his Chennai Super Kings should be disqualified from the IPL after the indictment of its official Gurunath Mayappan by the Mudgal Committee on charges of betting. Mayappan is the son-in-law of Srinivasan.
I feel that it's not only Mr. Srinivasan, it's just the tip of an iceberg. What about those who are in the governing council, the members who were either presidents or chairmen of their association, members of their association who were in the governing council? They violated laws in 2009 when the IPL was taken to South Africa. FEMA violation, FERA violation, FDI violation, RBI violations. There's so many of them. I don't know what has happened to that.
Srinivasan is himself facing questions on conflict of interest. The Apex Court asked for details of shares held by him and his company India Cements, who are the owners of Chennai Super Kings. The Supreme Court also raised questions over the post of Indian captain MS Dhoni in India Cements.
सवाल किसी पार्टिकुलर प्लेयर नहीं है, सवाल ये है कि इंडिया सीमेंट में अगर रोल है महेंद्र सिंह धोनी जी का, तो खुद उनके जो काउंसिल उनके एफिडेविट में ही है कि वो वाइस प्रेसिडेंट भी है। तब कोर्ट को इस बात पे थोड़ा ताज्जुब हुआ, एतराज़ भी जताया कि वो इंडिया सीमेंट के अगर वाइस प्रेसिडेंट हैं तो भारत के भी कप्तान हैं, सीएस के भी कप्तान हैं, तो इनका चयन प्रणाली किस माध्यम से हुआ, कोर्ट ये सीएसके से जानना चाहता है।
Further, the Apex Court asked BCCI why fresh elections haven't been held yet. It added that people named in the Mudgal report should not contest. The BCCI AGM is slated on 17th of December and Srinivasan is seeking another term.
जो आईपीएल में गड़बड़ किए उनको पूरी तरह से क्रिकेट से बाहर करो, ये होना चाहिए.
In the event of the CSK making an exit, the business landscape of the IPL would see a significant change. The total money riding on CSK is close to 180 crore rupees. The Supreme Court's observation also throws open the question of the fate of the IPL in general. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, that's it in your daily news of all that happened in India and across the world on News Tonight. Thanks very much from our team. Good night.